For decades, the United States has held global dominance in both military and economic spheres. However, a new world order is now taking shape as Russia and Saudi Arabia join forces, plotting to overthrow the US by crippling its economy. The question arises, which of these countries will emerge as the successor to the US, and how will their actions impact you? Stay tuned as we delve into Saudi Arabia's ambitious plan to dismantle the US economy. Since the conclusion of World War II, the US dollar has reigned supreme as the primary global trading currency for nearly 80 years. Nevertheless, recent developments on the world stage have triggered discussions among many nations about moving away from the dollar, raising concerns about its future dominance. Specifically, Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 prompted the United States to spearhead a series of financial sanctions. These sanctions, which involved freezing almost half of Russia's foreign currency reserves totaling $300 billion and excluding major Russian banks from SWIFT, an interbank messaging service facilitating international payments, have proven to be powerful weapons. Some experts have even coined the term weaponization of the dollar to describe their impact. As a result, Russia and China, the US's primary geopolitical rivals, have responded by promoting their own alternative financial infrastructures. However, it's not only Beijing and Moscow that are taking action. Many nations and regions have recently intensified their efforts to reduce their reliance on the dollar, with Saudi Arabia prominently among them. Political economists and sanctions experts warn that the underlying fear in many capitals is the possibility that the US will someday exploit the power of its currency to target them, as it has done with Russia. How did the dollar rise to become the supreme force in the global economy and maintain its position for so long? In 1944, representatives from 44 countries gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to discuss post-war economic reconstruction. They collectively agreed that the United States, as the world's largest economy, would anchor the value of the dollar to gold, and other countries would follow suit. Under this agreement, countries were required to hold reserves in dollars to support their exchange rates, solidifying the dollar's dominance as the global currency by the 1970s. However, the Bretton Woods system eventually faltered due to the United States lacking sufficient gold to back its currency. Nonetheless, the dollar had already established itself as the reserve currency for other nations. Even though countries are no longer obligated to peg their currencies to the dollar, the deep and flexible financial market, transparent corporate governance norms, and the stability of the dollar have ensured its continued dominance. Despite discussions surrounding de-dollarization, triggered by the collapse of the Bretton Woods system, the introduction of the euro by the European Union in 1999, and the 2008-2009 financial crisis, the dollar's position remained resilient. It has weathered these storms, and today, nearly 60% of the world's central banks' foreign exchange reserves are held in dollars. However, this percentage has gradually decreased from around 70% in 2000, indicating a gradual shift within the global financial order, as observed by experts. Since its inception, the euro has experienced only a slight increase, going from 18% to just under 20% of global reserves. In contrast, China's currency, the renminbi, yuan, has shown the fastest growth since 2016, despite currently holding less than 3% of global reserves. Over the past year, the incentives for countries to expedite their shift away from the dollar have intensified, as experts suggest. The recent US-led sanctions, which froze Russia's access to half of its reserves and restricted a Russian bank's transactions through the crucial SWIFT system, have rattled many nations, providing a fresh impetus to de-dollarization efforts. The sanctions imposed on Russia acted as a real catalyst this time, stated Zhang Yuanzhou Lu, an expert in international political economy at the Council on Foreign Relations in New York. She further described the decision to exclude Russia from the SWIFT system as equivalent to deploying a financial nuclear option. In the integrated global financial system, SWIFT's significance in international banking is often compared to that of Gmail in email communication. Thus, blocking Russia's access to SWIFT is akin to cutting off their vital lifelines. Countries like China, which already face US sanctions in sectors such as semiconductors, are concerned that such measures could be employed against them in the future, potentially disrupting the functioning of their economies. Analysts highlight this as the reason why China is actively pursuing measures to distance itself from reliance on the US dollar, according to a sanctions expert and executive fellow at the Geneva Center for Security Policy. Once a country leaves the SWIFT system, it loses the convenience of cross-border transactions and faces the risk of exclusion from global supply chains, which can have detrimental effects on its overall economy. China has taken various steps to reduce its reliance on the US dollar. For instance, it has been selling US Treasury bonds, which are typically held as reserves, and currently holds the lowest level of US debt since 2010, amounting to $870 billion. China has also been actively negotiating trade deals denominated in yuan with other countries. In February, Iraq's central bank, a significant oil supplier, announced that trade with China could be settled in yuan for the first time. Similarly, Bangladesh's central bank made a similar announcement, and member countries of the China-dominated Shanghai Cooperation Organization agreed to increase trade in their respective currencies. The bloc includes Russia, India, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan, in addition to China. Furthermore, China and Saudi Arabia conducted their first yuan transaction in December. Meanwhile, Russia has decided to store all its surplus oil and gas revenue in yuan, emphasizing its growing reliance on the Chinese currency for forex reserves. It's important to note that sanctions are not the sole factor motivating countries to move away from the dollar. Smaller economies with significant dollar-denominated debt exposure, as well as plans to enhance regional trade, have also prompted countries to seek alternatives. The value of the US dollar has appreciated significantly, with a more than 10% increase since the start of the Ukraine war in February 2022 and a 30% increase compared to a decade ago. This surge in the dollar's value has made repaying dollar-denominated debt much more expensive. Moreover, countries heavily reliant on imports of fuel, food, and other essential commodities from other nations will face skyrocketing import bills. Therefore, not only China and Russia but also numerous other countries, including close US allies, are actively exploring alternatives to the dollar as a means to mitigate these challenges. In recent developments, the United Arab Emirates (UAE) ambassador to India announced that the two countries were actively working on finalizing a deal to conduct trade using their respective currencies, the dirham and the rupee. The UAE holds significant importance as one of India's key trading partners. Furthermore, an official from the Indian Ministry of Commerce revealed in January that countries such as Russia, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Mauritius were eager to engage in trade using the rupee. Moreover, major economies in Southeast Asia are collaborating to establish a mechanism that enables the use of mobile apps for trading in local currencies, thereby reducing reliance on the US dollar as an intermediary. A report from the Wall Street Journal indicated that Saudi Arabia and China engaged in serious discussions about using the yuan for oil purchases shortly after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Notably, the China National Offshore Oil Corporation made a significant LNG trade using the yuan with the United Arab Emirates on the same day that China and Brazil announced their intent to conduct business using the yuan and riel. The Export-Import Bank of China subsequently announced its preparedness to lend yuan to Saudi Arabia's state-owned banks, which facilitates the yuan's utilization in bilateral trade. Saudi Arabia's pursuit of de-dollarization has the potential to disrupt the existing system of dollar supremacy. Additionally, indicating significant geopolitical shifts, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, reportedly expressed a decreased interest in prioritizing the United States, a long-standing ally, according to associates close to him. These developments follow Saudi Arabia's surprising announcement, along with other OPEC members, of a cut in oil production by 1.15 million barrels per day, commencing next month and extending until the end of 2023, as unnamed sources familiar with the matter revealed. The Crown Prince expects reciprocation from the United States for any concessions or offerings made by Saudi Arabia. Overall, these recent events highlight the growing momentum in using local currencies for trade, as countries like the UAE, India, China, and Saudi Arabia actively explore alternatives to the US dollar in various trade agreements and financial arrangements. This shift in attitude from Saudi Arabia could potentially have significant repercussions for the long-standing strategic alliance between the United States and Saudi Arabia, which has remained relatively stable for many years. As a major oil producer and regional power in the Middle East, any change in Saudi Arabia's political orientation towards the United States could have wide-ranging consequences both within the region and beyond. Saudi Arabia's crown prince, who holds significant power in the country, has previously shown a dislike for US President Joe Biden. However, what would happen if the value of the dollar were to decline? In such a scenario, it would mean that foreigners would not need as many dollars, leading to an excess supply of dollars that no one wants. This depreciation of the dollar weakens its value, usually starting slowly but gaining momentum over time, resembling a progressive rush for the exits. Initially, those who exit early only experience minor losses, but the longer they wait, the greater their losses become. The ultimate result of a falling dollar is that it significantly impacts Americans. Americans are the only people legally required to use the US dollar, thanks to an obscure law passed in 1862 during wartime, which has remained in effect for 151 years. Unless Americans exchange their dollars for alternatives such as gold, Bitcoin, or other currencies, they will suffer the consequences. The repercussions for Americans are manifold. A declining dollar leads to increased costs for imported goods into the United States. Additionally, it raises the prices of raw materials and imported components that drive American factories and sustain American consumers. The first sectors affected by this would include petroleum, heating fuel, and food prices, all of which operate in global markets.